So my skill set has been varied in various technologies because today's tech field is very dynamic and demanding, and it is changing at a rapid pace. So certainly, one thing that is not going to change is we gaining knowledge on technologies. So I hope you people are excited to learn something new. But before that, let's do a pulse check kind of thing. So how many of us have heard about cloud native application development or microservices, or what is Docker, what is Kubernetes? Can someone turn on the mic and just tell me how many of us have heard this before or already know about this before?
I've heard of all those terms before, but I'm not really sure what a lot of those mean. Like, I
Okay,
know what they are in
okay,
general, but if you ask me what they were, I might not be able to explain it to you.
okay, sure. That is why we are here today. Thank you, Prachi. Anyone else? Anyone? I guess most of us have this cloud computing as one of the subjects in this semester. So you guys must know what is cloud at least. What is cloud computing? I understand that I am throwing you into an awkward situation. Ma'am is also here. She'll be noting down who is answering what.
Students, please be interactive. The session will be very interesting if you also speak out.
Yes.
Cloud computing is basically accessing data which is stored somewhere else where we are not aware of where it's stored.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like remotely accessing data from an unknown place. So it's an illusion. Like we think it's coming from the cloud
Mm-hmm.
where we don't know where it's stored.
Right. That is one of the ways the cloud computing works. Yes. Right. Anyone else?
Cloud computing is making use of computer resources.
Computer with? Sorry.
So, making use of a computer resource
Okay.
which are available remotely,
Okay.
and based on the need, we are going to use how much.
You're not audible, Parikshit. Okay, that is okay. Fine. Thank you. Maybe anyone have heard about what is a cloud native application development? How is it different from any other application development? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You can call me Arun. It's okay. Okay, don't worry. I'm not going to put you more into this. Maybe I'll just get started. The main aim of this course is to get you up and running with the most important bits of what are probably the two most important technologies since cloud itself. So this does not require much of an experience before. In fact, it is designed to be a first step into the world of containers and cloud native. So from the start, we'll cover all the basic of what is containers, and then we'll understand what is Docker and Kubernetes. Also, we'll touch up what is microservices and cloud native. Then also, we'll see how to prepare ourselves into this world. So this course is important because it's a two big technology which we are going to talk about. One is Docker and the Kubernetes. They're literally changing the IT world today. And if you're going to be involved in IT, which I assume you are, so you want to position yourself as best as you can for the future, then you are absolutely need to know this stuff. So it is not just an option, but this is also the couple of technologies which has come along and reshape our world like these. So it is very interesting, and you guys have to try to put in more effort in understanding what these technologies are. So maybe I'll start with what is containers and Kubernetes. They're pretty much front center on most people's agenda right now. And we have crossed all that hype. Back then, it was only too much of hype on what is Kubernetes and Docker. So today we have come way ahead. Most people that I know are speaking about working on Docker, Kubernetes, or they're about to deploy them, or at least they're in conversations how to implement this in their companies. So it is pretty much everywhere now. Instead of ignoring the fact it exists, we should also embrace it and learn to use it in our day-to-day executions. So I call it cloud native big picture. It is a bit of a giveaway. It is more of what to say. It's just a to point you in the right direction, because I understand containers is a big ocean. So there are many buzzwords in this, and many projects and companies are here working on this. So this is just an initial step towards the world of containers. So I guess you guys can just learn a bit about this and start extending and getting more knowledge on this. So this is just a first introduction. And well, the agenda for this is we'll see what is containers first, and then we'll go with what are Dockers, what are Kubernetes, and everything. Okay, is that fine? Say something.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay,
I'm
thank
looking
you.
forward to learning.
Thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
Thank you. Yep. Okay, let's get started. Any idea what is a container? Anyone in the call knows what is a container?
Container is something like virtualization, but it's not an application, but we can say it contains dependency files and libraries. That things will be.
Okay. Okay. So a proper understanding of container is fundamental to any journey with Docker and Kubernetes. So that we'll do now anyway. I'll give you an understanding of what a container is. In fact, we'll also see a demo on that, but we'll talk a bit about what microservices are and what all this cloud native stuff means. So here's the plan. We'll start out by a bit of IT history, the bad old days, and why we need the containers, why the evolution of containers. First, we'll start with bad old days. There was something known as VMware and hypervisors. Then we'll see what containers are, and we'll see a small demo. Okay. So let's go to the bad old days. What happened? What used to happen before? A quick tour of IT history. So fundamental to IT, and something I would hope everyone in IT understand: application run businesses. Okay. No matter what sector you are in these days, application is the key. Let it be banking, retail, airlines, air traffic control, whatever it is your business does, applications are the center of it. In fact, it becomes impossible to distinguish between the business and the application that powers it. So they really are one and the same. And you know what? I've heard it like million times: no application, no businesses. That is the key. If you see today, when we use Ola, Uber, Swiggy, Zomato, all of these businesses run mainly because of the applications they depend on. If you do not have an application for Ola or Uber, you will not know how to book a cab or order food online. So seriously, if there is no application, there is no business, and it is getting truer every day. So most of the applications are running on servers, and back in those days, I would say early mid 2000s, most of the time we were doing one app per server. And by server, I mean those are really big, expensive servers, something like this, like a physical tin like this. So yeah, one for every app. And the model worked a bit like this: like business needs a new application for whatever reason, maybe any new product launch or whatever, they used to go buy a big server like this. And this not just is a big server, but it also involves a lot of operational cost, capital expenses, a lot of things. And also cooling this down isn't free, because you will have to set up all the cooling infrastructure to maintain these servers. So it was very difficult to manage them, and even you'll have to hire people to build and administer these things. So we started doing something like this, like every application used to run on individual servers, and we also were not clear on how big of a server we used to require before. So it was always a question with the IT guys where how big we need this or how fast we would need this. So what we used to do is we used to get the biggest as possible, because we don't want the performance of a business going down because we have a poor server at the back end. So we usually, what we do is we used to take a bigger server, no matter how efficiently the application runs or not, but we go for a bigger one and then we run the application on that. So if you see, the application might just require or maybe using only 25 or maybe less than 10% of the entire server, but still we used to do that just to make the business running. So it's just a shameful waste of company capital and resources. So this was the bad old days, what we used to do earlier in mid 2000. Then something known as, it's a pretty famous company, I guess everyone would have heard of, VMware. So they came and changed the world for better. And it just overnight, they came and they installed VMware on top of us, and we could use the resources very efficiently now. Let's say whatever we used to run before, we could run it with 4 applications on the same server, and we could utilize the server to most of its potential. So that is what VMware came and did to us. Like, we could utilize the server at a very efficiently, and so that we don't waste our money for buying individual application and individual server. So instead of that, we could use one server to run 4 or 5 applications at the same time. So do you think it's a perfect solution? What do you think is a problem here? Any idea?
The servers needed to be on all the time, whether or not they're being used.
Okay, let's consider that your application is in use always, because for Ola or Swiggy, your application has to run all the time. What do you think is a disadvantage of using VMware solution?
Scaling.
Okay. Yes.
Like if those Ola, Uber, suppose they needed more, they had more customers suddenly, they'll
Correct.
have trouble, downtime. They'll probably face downtime.
Correct, because they'll have to extend, they'll have to get one more system, then they'll have to set it up. So yeah, I would agree that would also be one of the problems for using VM solution. Yes. Any other reason? Okay, let us continue then. So there is a but always. So when there is a but, we should know it is not a perfect solution. And what did we do after that? So what is the reason why it had its own problems? Because if we take a single physical server, I'm going to slightly go to a more detailed diagram this time. Maybe it's just an high level. So this is our server, and it got processors, memory, and disk space, and we can run a bunch of apps on it. Now I'm showing 4 here to keep the diagram simple. Anyway, to run these 4 applications, we create 4 virtual machines. And each one of these is essentially a slice of physical service hardware. Let's call this here virtual server 1, and we might have allocated, I don't know, 25% of underlying servers, processing power, and 25% of CPU, 25% of memory. So something like that. And we have similarly for everything. The problem we see here is there is an operating system running on top of all these VMs. So this is, again, a problem. Why do you think it's a problem? Any idea? We have 4 different operating systems running on 4 virtual machines.
Resources are divided.
Sorry.
She said that the resources will be divided.
Yes, correct. Right. So that is one of the point. The resources are actually, these operating systems are stealing those resources. But not just that, even if you have 4 operating systems, you'll have to afford those 4 operating system
Resources are
licenses.
divided.
Yes, yes, thank you. Yeah, not just that, but also we have to buy the 4 different licenses of operating system. Let's say one has Windows something, then the other one has Windows 10, a different version of Windows, because we know Windows, we need to pay for the license. And even if something has Mac or something, you'll have to pay for those licenses. So that was also one of the operational costs which the companies used to face. And it used to take a lot of resources, and we need admins to manage these 4 different systems. Not just that, patching, updates, and also you'll have to invest on antiviruses. So these are the costs which we used to let out a lot from the company's point of view. So what we did is, this gave birth to something known as containers. So containers are something very simple. You do not have to buy a big server and set up 4 different operating systems. Instead, what you do is you run these 4 applications on one server. It could be a Linux or Windows. So there itself, we reduce the cost of operating system licenses or maintaining them or something like that. So, and resources are also very few, because we are not going to install 4 different operating systems here. What we do is just install one operating system, and we'll have 4 applications running on it on 4 different containers. So these become very lightweight right now, and this gives space to run many more containers on top of it. So this is how it works right now. So you see on the left, you see how it used to work with VMware before. On the right, you can see how it works with the containers. So it has become very simple and very lightweight right now. You don't have to allocate any disk space or anything for a particular container here. It's more of, it just spans in a few seconds and executes. And as it completes its lifetime, it can just get destroyed, and you can create a new container as you go. So it has become very easy right now. You can create much more containers with the resources we have right now, because we are not going to install big operating systems with it. Instead, we are going to have a lighter version of the required dependencies installed in the container. Hope you understand what I'm trying to say. Or is it going over your head?
It makes sense.
Right? Super. Yeah. So before we jump on to the next thing, let's take a simple demo how a container in my case works. So let me switch to the demo. I have an image here. Let's say this is an image. So I'm not going to tell you what this image contains right now, because we are going to see that in detail before, like later in this course. So let me just, this is a Docker desktop application which I have. I'll just run this container. So that's it. The container is live and running right now. It didn't take much time at all. You just spawn a container right now. If you want to reach them, you just go to localhost. It's just a web application which I'm running. That's it. Your container is up and running. What we can do is just stop. Give it some time for it to stop. It's done. If you try to reach that, the container is down now. You won't be able to reach the container. So it is that simple to trigger a container. It's not a big deal. All you have to do is you have to build the application. You have to keep the image ready. Once your image is ready, then we just go into it and deploy. And once you're done, your application is ready and ready to use. So that is all. It's very simple. Let us go back to the demo. So just a simple recap. Initially, we saw what is virtualization by VMware, what they did, and what is the reason for containers to take birth. So that is what we saw initially. Now let us try to understand what is a microservice and a cloud native. So this is nothing but earlier in those days we used to build one big application, a monolith application. So what we used to have is, let's say we had these separate components like the web front end, search, authentication, stock, card, checkout. These are the different components in your application. And back in those days, we didn't care about splitting these components. Instead, what we did is we tightly coupled them with each other. So the problem with this solution is, if there is some changes that requires to be done for an individual component, it was very difficult. Let's say I wanted to fix something, some search component. If you want to fix that component, it used to be a big, because it used to have a bulky code. And also someone, if you want to roll out this to the application deployment, then he has to pull down the entire application down to make this one change. Let's say a simple change in search component, put your application into stall, and then you fix that change and then push it again back to the live thing. So this used to be a problem back then. So with microservices right now, what we did is we separated all these components. There's no more like, they still talk to each other. But in this case, if you want to fix a particular component, let's say you want to fix search this time, you don't have to bring the entire system down. Instead, you just fix search, and then only the search component goes down, you redeploy the search component, and everything works fine now. So you don't have to worry about whether your system is up and running or anything. Your system is always up and running. Only some portion of the component is down, and you're fixing that. So this gives you almost 99% of your application to be live. So there's no major downtime as such. So this also gives birth to something known as on-premise as well as cloud-based development, because cloud native is nothing but building your application in a microservice-based architecture. Everything we're going to build here is going to be a small services. So once these services are up and running, we could just deploy it anywhere. It could be your on-premise or it could be your cloud. So later, if something happens, you just change one code and everything works like gem. Hope you are understanding this.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Also, in this case, if you see, if in case there is too much load in the previous application, if you see, if there was too much, as one of you told, if it will be a scalability problem. So in this case, you don't have to scale the entire application. Instead, let's say if your web front end has too much load, all you have to do is just pick one particular service, increase their instances, rather than increasing instances of everything, which is a bulk code. Rather, in this case, you just increase the instance of web alone. So that makes it so much easier and so much beneficial in terms of expense we are doing in the previous generation. So that has saved a lot for us. So let us move to the next topic. Like, yeah, as I told, containers are the next gen thing, and we have to move towards containers. If you see, all the new startups have started working completely on containers, but also there are companies like big chains like SAPs or Google or Amazon's. They still use VMs because containers alone, they do not fall under. They also work on multiple technologies. So they still go along side by side with containers and virtualizations. So that is the current focus we are doing. Like, we can't just go away with virtualization or something. We go side by side. Even containers are being used these days, and virtualization is also used. Let us move to Docker. Is everyone with me? If you have any doubt, feel free to stop me and ask questions. Are you guys with me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Cool. So I heard someone told she has heard about Docker, but any idea, any guesses what is Docker now? We have spoke about containers. We have seen what is microservices. We have seen what is a cloud native development and all. But any idea what is a Docker now?
Sir,
Cloud platform, sir.
we use Dockers to deliver containers.
It's good. That's a good answer. But what do you mean by deliver containers? Can you be more specific?
So basically, it allows us to use all the softwares and their dependencies that are in containers, that we're running in
Yeah,
containers.
correct. Docker is like someone who helps us to deploy our code into container. So you can say Docker runs our code in containers. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes, sir.
Correct. Okay, that's good. That's a good answer. Yeah. So yeah, with Docker we have two things. One is Docker Inc. as a company, and there's a technology Docker. So they are very closely linked, but they're not the same. So we'll talk about them separately, and we'll start with the company first, and then later we'll see a demo, the same application, how we are building, and later we'll see that in a demo. First, let's talk about Docker Inc., Docker project, and demo. So what is this Docker Inc.? So Docker Inc., it is a technology startup from San Francisco, and they were the main sponsors behind the open source container technology with the same name. But it is way more than that. Docker, the company, didn't actually start out life as Docker. Instead, they were called as .cloud, where they used to build, ship, and run applications. So .cloud, initially they provided a developer platform on AWS. They used to give a developer experience on top. And what happened was they weren't doing so good with that business. So in around 2013 or something, they really needed something different to stay in competition. And it just so happens in one of those twists of fate, they had been using containers to build their platform on top of AWS. And this is important bit because whatever they were building it homegrown technology as an internal tool, that actually came up as a major contribution towards the technology. So a long story short, they wanted something and they looked in-house for building containers, and they had it with them itself. So obviously that in-house tech was Docker, and later they changed the company name to Docker Inc. So that is how the Docker was born. And anyone knows what Docker means actually? What Docker, the word means? Just a guess.
Sir, like ship docking, unloading, and loading.
Correct. So somebody who works in a dock or a shipping port is called as docker. They've just, it's actually called as dock worker, which they made it as a docker as one word. So that is how the word docker has come. So thanks, yeah. Later they had showcases and got a lot of money, like 200 million in a couple of years. And then they were able to build something known as Docker Inc. And now they are doing very well. They have been building a lot of projects, and it is also still open source. Many of us can contribute to them. Also, there are big chains involved in the contribution to Docker today, like Microsoft, Red Hat. All these people are today working on Docker, and they're contributing to them at a world-class level. Yes. So let us move to Docker, the technology now. Containers are like lightweight virtual machines And Docker make running our apps inside of containers really easy. So if you see, the main takeaway is Docker makes running app inside of containers really easy. Anyway, the Docker application, if you will, is an open source. And like most open source software these days, it lives on GitHub. And a lot of people, and they want to involve enterprises. So what they have done is they have two different versions. One is the community edition, which is open and people can contribute and use for free. Whereas there's one more edition, which is enterprise edition, where they provide, where they'll have to pay for the license, and then they will get a separate support from their enterprise level support from Docker. So that's what is the difference between the community edition and the enterprise edition. Whereas community editions have a lot of contributions, and since we have a lot of contributions, there is too many quick release cycles because there is too many contributions from open or any developer from open world. Whereas enterprise edition has a slower release cycle because it has to be stable. That is the reason they keep it very slow, and because if it is fast changing, enterprises will face issue because they'll have to adapt their technology to build and make changes as the platform changes. So instead, with enterprise edition, they go with slower release cycle, and they'll have additional features from what community edition has, and they have enterprise level support given from Docker. So this is Docker for you. And maybe I can just show you a simple, it'll be the same application, but more of how it is pulled and how the application works. So maybe I can switch to that. So this is an application which I have. It's a simple Node.js application. What it does is it has a backend and a simple UI, where in UI I just say, it's a pug here. If you see, what I do is just make few HTML tags and everything, which says hello Docker world. Hope you're having fun. This is what is the front end, and you see one important thing here is the Docker file. So if your project has a Docker file, it tells the Docker what has to be done to run this particular application. So let us open this Docker file. If you see, what I do is I just add the Node.js dependencies here. I copy them, then I do a npm install. So npm install will install all the dependency requests for this project and expose this application which is running within the container, because within the container, you won't be able to access them. So what you do is you expose them on a particular node. So once your application is ready and you expose that on 8080, only then you will be able to access them from your outer, let's say your container is something internal, it has exposed something there, but you won't be able to access that. So there is a network bridge which is built in between, and you will be able to access only when this is done. So expose 8080. So whatever the application which is running is exposed on 8080 on your local host. That is what, if you remember, we did it here. We tried hitting localhost 8080. So how we do this? Let us see. It's a simple demo. I have the Docker setup done. So to check what are the images available already, I say Docker images. So Docker images are something which is like the images which are pulled from Docker Hub. Docker Hub is something like similar to GitHub. Have any of you worked on GitHub before?
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay, so similar to GitHub, we have something known as Docker Hub, which maintains all our code in an image format. So these Docker images are pulled from the Docker Hub. Then we have maintained it in our local. If I want to build a new image, let's say I have the project ready here already in my local. So if I want to create another image of it, I'll just say Docker image build. Ensure that you're typing this where the Docker file is present. Only then it will be able to pick the Docker file and install all the dependencies required. So Docker image build -t, you have to give the repository which is on Docker Hub. So my repository on Docker Hub is Arun Srivasan / I have a repository there, GSS container demo. And I already have one of the tag. Tag is nothing but a version here. So I have already have one. So I'll create another version of it. So 2. Let me build the image. Oh, I have to give the path. Sorry. So I'm giving dot because it's the current folder. So you see what is happening here is it went into the Docker file. It understood it has to update Node.js and Node.js npm. So that is what it is doing. It just updates and it install if in case the npm does not present in the container. So whatever is happening is it is building an image right now. So it builds all the dependencies within one package and creates an image out of it. So once that is done, I'll just wait for it to complete. So the image is ready here. If you want to see, you could do Docker images. So now you can see I have 2 versions of JS's container demo. One is the first version of it. The 2 is just few seconds ago I deployed. So you have 2 versions of it. Now this is fine. Either you could have it here or you could also push it to the Docker Hub. So if I can also open a Docker Hub for you. So what I'm doing here is I'm opening Docker Hub for you. So this is my repository. If you could see, I already have JS container demo repository here. And currently only tag 1 is available. So if you want me to push the second tag, what I have to do is just say Docker image push /JSS container and give a tag. Tag tells which version of image you want to push. So building of image is the only process which takes time for you because it has to deinstall all the dependencies and create one bulk. So once this image is ready, all you have to do is just run them into a container. So it is very simple. Running a application in a container is very, very simple. So this is more of, as you all know how GitHub works, this is more of Git push, how you do it so that whatever changes you have made, you have committed those changes and you're pushing that into GitHub right now. Do you guys have any questions for me meanwhile? Okay, so we were able to push our image into the repository. So we just verify that in Docker Hub right now because we have only one. So if you see, this is the image we pushed right now. So you could see last updated a few seconds ago. So once that is done, all we have to do is just run this image once again. So we have already seen how to do it. Docker Desktop has already done a lot of improvements. You could do it here, or you could do it from command line. So back in those days, we never had this flexibility of showcasing the images which is available and running from here. All we had to do was use the command line. So let us do the old way, how to run this application in older way. So what we say is docker run, and I give a name for it, hyphen name. Let's say call it web for now. And what we do here is hyphen p is nothing but port. We give the port. So what is this two ports here? One is 8080, the other one is 80. As we have already seen what is 8080, that is nothing but it is the port which is exposed on the container front. And we are building a network bridge to the container and our outer world by saying whatever is present on 8080, just tunnel it to 80 right now. So we specify that and we give the repository name. So the image which we created right now is JSS CONT demo, and give the tag name. That is all. And you run the container. You could see it is not going to take much time, just few seconds. Once it is ready, it gives you a container ID, which it is running. I don't know why it is taking longer than usual. Let's give it some more time. Meanwhile, we can come to this, and now we know that it is no more exposed at 80 now. So let us switch to 80. So Docker PS is nothing but it just gives you a list of content it is running right now. We see that our container has not yet created. So let us give it another shot. Did I miss something? Yes, it was quick. It was my mistake. I just had hyphen name. So you could see it was quick this time. It was not the container's issue. It was my issue. I gave the command wrong. So once it is deployed, you should be able to see it. It was that simple. We were able to deploy the application in a very few seconds. So we are done here with the Docker demo. Let's get back to presentation. So we will be moving to the next topic, something known as Kubernetes. Did you guys, before going there, did you guys understand what is Docker? Or are you able to relate it to your existing workload, like how you can improve this with Docker? Do you see any potential there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How would you, or what would your mindset be right now after knowing how this Docker works? Has it made any changes in you in terms of thinking of application development? Or
It was
deploying
nice to
something?
see. It was nice to see how fast and smooth it was.
Okay. Okay. If in case you have a problem to solve, will this help you to think in a different way? Let's say you want to build an e-commerce website right now. What would be your approach towards it? Many of us are using Amazon.com or Flipkart. See, there are many services that are running. If you see, there is a catalog page, then there is recommendations, then there is a login page, then there is um, payment page. So in this case, if you want to build some application like that, what would your approach be right now after reading what Docker is?
Uh, we'll use different containers. I use Dockers for different applications, so it will be easier to maintain and deploy.
Right. So different containers for different components, you mean? Or how do you understand when to use what or which component to fall under which service? Or do you also see, let's consider a payment page is one of the component. Do you want to make payment page alone as one container?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you feel that one container we have to dedicate to payments right now? So that would be your approach, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, dedicating one container to different um, categories altogether.
So all of this fall under one container. Okay, let us consider, we also know payments is not a small component. It deals with large, I mean, it has so many things. Like even if you go to payments, you have different ways of payment. One is credit card, one is debit card, wallets. Again, there are different payment modes. Do you feel that still one container can do all of this? Or do you want to still further break it down and make some more containers? Every transaction becomes a container. Actually, I'm giving you the answer.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for acknowledging. Okay. So since
How
we
do
are
you
talking
know
about,
what to put where though?
that is the way we think from here on. Microservices is nothing but the way we are going to code from here on. Like back then, we used to build one big application. We didn't care about how big it is. We used to run it as one, and if something goes down, the entire application goes down. That is the mindset which we used to have earlier. But now, on uh, birth of microservices, we will have to understand what has to be a microservices now, because we can't have such a bulky application running inside a container, because if container is too heavy, the whole point of microservices is gone. You're just building another monolith running inside a container now. So we'll have to start thinking what has to be a service. Microservice, a microservice is nothing but you should just give it a simple work to do it, and it'll complete that and it gives you result. Or if you can break, let's say in payments, if I'm only for credit card, I can use a container just to main. If someone clicks on credit card, just swamp one spawn one container for just credit card payment, and once that is completed, kill the container. So this is how the approach from here on should, the way we think is what is going to be defined in developing our application going forward. So you're able to understand what I'm trying to say?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I think only few people are responding. I don't know what about others. Have they slept? Okay. Let's quickly move on to the next concept, which is known as Kubernetes. Kubernetes is the. I'll tell you what Kubernetes is going forward. In Kubernetes, we'll be seeing what was the history of Kubernetes and what it actually means. And going forward, we'll understand. Since we talk about Docker so much, why would we need Kubernetes now? Any idea? Any idea what is Kubernetes?
No, sir.
Okay. 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 Let's start with the history of Kubernetes, how Kubernetes was found and all. So back in those days, Google was taking over the internet. In fact, how many of you remember this? I'm not sure. This is the Google page which used to look in like 1990. If you remember, anyone knows? Have you seen this Google page in 1999?
We were born then.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Okay, sorry. So this is how Google used to look in 1999. So it was very early stage, but they began to dominate the internet, and they were building so many applications like search engines, Gmail, and many such stuff. So what they used to do is they used to run all these on a container. Every search in Google runs a container. So that means there used to be millions and millions of container which were running on a particular day. Because we know that individual page results, everything comes, you could see so many pages for one search which we make gives you so many pages of information. So everything used to be a container, and maintaining these containers got very difficult. So that is what Google started doing. Initially they started with one project called Borg, and then Borg, and then they started building with that learnings to Omega. And with both these learnings, they came with something new again that is called Kubernetes. So Kubernetes was born to manage all these containers, because Docker is nothing but it will just run your application in a container. But who manages all these containers? There are millions and millions of container gets created every day. How will you manage these containers? It will be very difficult if we can just create containers and it's like a dangling pointers. You don't know how to manage them. So that is why we need Kubernetes today. So they came up with one project called Cloud Native Computing Foundation. This is a group of people who are still, even today, they are contributing towards Kubernetes. So this is another open source technology, and it works on all cloud platforms, also on-premise, and it is also works on even you can set it up in your local desktop also. Even though Kubernetes is a multi-node cluster, but if you want to do something on your local laptop also, you could do that. You can just install a single node Kubernetes. Once that is done, you can just run a simple program on top of it. So that is what it says. So Kubernetes is nothing but it's in a Greek it's called helpsman. Helpsman is nothing but a person you could call a sailor who knows how to operate the ship. So that is what Kubernetes is here in this case also. It knows how to operate all the containers which are running. So it is also called as K8s. So 8 stands for these 8 characters before K and S. So some people call it K8s and some people call it K8s or K8s. So that is what Kubernetes is identified as. And if you see today, all 3 major big cloud providers like Amazon, Azure, Google, everyone offer their own Kubernetes services. So does IBM also have started their own Kubernetes services. In Amazon, if you see, they called as EKS, Elastic Kubernetes Service. Similarly, in Azure, they have AKS, GKE from Google. So similarly, they have their own Kubernetes service. It is such a big thing that is happening in today's world. So applications that are created on top of Kubernetes can run anywhere. So because all 3 cloud providers today are giving you Kubernetes services. So if you build an application which uses Docker and Kubernetes today, you could just migrate them from one cloud services to another cloud services pretty easily, because you build once and you have platforms which are already built on these 3 platforms. So it's not very difficult for you to move from one cloud provider to another cloud provider. So you build once, you deploy it everywhere. So that is the whole point of having Kubernetes. So short and skinny, that is what is all about. You see Docker, all it does is it starts a container, it stops a container, deletes. So whatever happens within container is managed by Docker, whereas whatever happens beyond these containers is managed by the Kubernetes. So if you want, I could give another example where if you see, many of us have gone to the musical conferences where we know that there is an orchestra and you'll have say a band of violins sitting at one place and drums sitting at one place, and there is also guitars at one place, pianos. They're all sitting separately and they have been composing their own music, but there is one person who will be standing in the middle who will be telling you or orchestrating the entire thing, saying that when the violin should come in, when the band of drums should come in. So he's the person who knows when to do what. Similarly, our applications also, what they do is, with the support of Kubernetes, it knows when a container has to be spawned, when the container has to be killed, when the container has to, how much of node to be given for a particular container. If say a container is a heavy weight, then you give this much of resource to that particular container. There is also another possibility where something goes down. I think it's already 12. Is it okay if I extend it a bit?
Yes, Arun, you can.
Okay, thank you. I'll just finish it as soon as possible. Yeah. So this Kubernetes takes care of everything. If something happens, maybe I can go in more in depth. If you see, these are the different nodes. It could run anywhere, cloud or on-premise, and everything has its own. Let's say every node, you need to have a Kubernetes agent and a Docker runtime. So if you have installed these, and there is something known as one master node which takes care of Kubernetes control panel, control plane, where it configures all these container, where it has to run, what, how much of space is required on a particular node. So it decides. It solely is the master who takes care of everything here. So once this is done, let us take our example. What we will do is we'll have a front end. I just say the Kubernetes, like for the front end, I need 2 instances of front end. I have been using this for front end of UI5. SAP UI5 is nothing but a HTML, CSS kind of an technology, whereas HANA is my backend. It's a database from SAP. So I need 1 instance of it. But what I also tell is, my front end is a very lightweight. I don't need a huge server for it. Just give me a small server for front end, whereas my back end is a database, so I need a bigger container in this case. So what Kubernetes does is, it gives you that. Whatever you ask, it gives you. It says front end is this, back end, I give you 2 instances of a bigger container for the back end with full memory and RAM, whereas in the front end, I give you 2 simple containers for a lower usage based instances for you. So this is what happens. When we have a 5 node or any number of node cluster, what we do is we allocate 2 clusters for 2 instances of these UI front ends and 1 node for completely for a database. So this is how Kubernetes manages. It understands what the cluster size is and how many nodes should I allocate for individual task. So once it does that, it also sees if in case your front end is overloaded now. Too many people are using the front end now. So what it does is it automatically adds 2 more instances of it, so that it manages the load now. It is able to use the remaining cluster which is idle. It just gives them the node to them, and you're able to see that, so due to the increased load, the 2 other instances of the front end has increased. But also what it does is, if in case the load has decreased, just like how during this Amazon Big Billion Day or Flipkart Big Billion Day, that there is too many people accessing the website now. So there is a sudden increase in load. So what Kubernetes can do in this case is it just create 2 more or 3 more, or in in this case, it should create millions of instances of the front end so that the load is being managed by the entire setup. So also, once the big billion day is over, what we do is we stop visiting their website now. So what it automatically does is it decreases the load. It decreases the load from the 4 nodes to 2 nodes. So now you see this entire thing is managed by Kubernetes. Let's say in case of a particular node failure, if there is a node failure, Kubernetes, you don't need any human to do all this. As soon as it sees some node is failed, something is wrong with that particular node, what it does is it just creates one more instance on a different node. So you don't need anyone to do this. Instead, the technology, the Kubernetes itself takes care of bringing up another node and setting it up with the front end code. So this is what Kubernetes primarily does, and because of this, it is able to orchestrate the entire life cycle of how the container works on a particular node. So if you see, Kubernetes is currently we have on multiple cloud. Here in this case, Cloud can be Amazon or Azure or Google. So all these clouds can be on as the platform is available. On top of that, K8 is ready now. So once that is ready, if your application is built on a K8 is compatible package, then you will be able to deploy it anywhere. So you build your application once, you just move it anywhere. You don't have to worry about whether it is working on cloud or on premise or anything. So the mindset of building the application is with us right now. The way we build it should be a microservice based and compatible with Kubernetes. So once it is ready, you should be able to run it everywhere. So there is no much of a problem with it right now. Once you build, just deploy it. Maybe what I can do is I can just show you the same code which I executed on my on-premise. I just push it to Google Cloud Platform, and we should see whether it works fine there or not. I didn't make any changes. I just pulled the code. I should be able to run it there. That is all I'm trying to do now. So if you see, this is the Google Platform console right now. So connection is lost. Let me reconnect. If you see, this is the Kubernetes engine provided by Google Platform. They are called as GKE, Google's Kubernetes engine. So once it is here, you see I have a project PS Web. It's similar to what we had there. We have a Docker file. PS Web, maybe I can show you the Docker file. Oh, sorry. So this is what we had there, expose it in 8080 and update node. So this is the same program which we had there. What I can do here is now pretty simple. I have the application here, and let me export the project ID so that I can reuse it again. Project ID is nothing but my project ID is here, what is created. So SAP plus. Now, even though I've already built it, let me build it again once again for you people so that I'll call it with a different name. JSS demo 2 version 1. Okay, I have to get into PS Web. Let me run it now. Authorize. So you could see the same process happening again. It is installing all the dependencies required for that particular project. So the image is ready now. All I have to do is just run the program. Docker run rm. This time I'm giving it 8080 itself. Whatever the port it is running inside can run outside as well. So gcr.io/ whatever the project ID is set as the environment variable here. I can still use it. And what is the name of the project which we built here is, I guess, JSS demo, JSS hyphen demo hyphen 2. And the version is v1. So let us run that. I'm missing something. Okay, port. So it is done. It is running now. You could just do a web preview on that particular port. So you should be seeing the same code running now. This is it. So your application is running right now on Kubernetes platform. So it was very simple. The same application, you saw how it works on my local desktop. I just built it irrespective of what my platform is. The same code is now running on Kubernetes as well. So you build once, you could run it everywhere. So that is what the flexibility we have with Docker and Kubernetes. So that is all I have for today. If you guys have any questions, you can ask.
Students, any questions?
Yeah. How do you decide the size of each container? Like how much component do you put in each container? How to decide that?
If you are just running a one particular container, then with Docker desktop, let's say if you're running it in a Docker desktop or something, there is a certain amount of memory which you can assign, like this is the top limit. Because what happens is if you don't set the limit, it can occupy the entire system and the other processes might get slow. You can say this is the top limit your desktop application can use. Once you give the top limit, within the top limit, the container runs. So you can also specify this is for a particular container also, this is the memory you have to run within. If you don't assign that, it takes as much as it requires for that particular program to run. So you could configure it basically with the command line itself.
No, I meant like as you were giving the example of the transaction system, and then how you said for credit card you will have a different container and all of that. How do you decide that? Like how much of the application is going to go in different containers?
In that kind of a setup, you will have something like a Kubernetes orchestrating all of this. So Kubernetes decides if in case something needs more memory for a particular node, for a particular instance, it allocates the memory. There also you'll have to give an upper limit up to this. You can scale. If not, you create another instance. So you can configure all that in Kubernetes.
Okay.
Yeah, any other questions? Students, any other questions you have? Arun is there.
If you see, this is the slide where I told it takes care of scheduling, scaling, healing, updating. All of these is managed by Kubernetes.
Got it.
Okay, Arun, I have one small query.
Sure.
To what extent the companies are already into this case?
Most of the companies have moved into K8s. Even SAP. We had previously HANA, which was running on-premise as an application, but now we have come up with something known as HANA Cloud. So HANA Cloud completely relies upon Kubernetes, and there's also another product from SAP which is called Data Intelligence. So that entirely works on Kubernetes. Similarly, there are many applications which are coming now with Kubernetes.
Yeah, because it is easy to migrate from, it will not be kind of vendor lock-in and
correct.
It will go beyond that.
Exactly.
So definitely, if somebody is developing an application, they will now think of developing only on K8 so that it is having a wider scope.
Correct. Especially companies like SAP, which is a product company, they'll have to provide support to every customer. Some customer might have their landscapes on AWS, and some customers might have it on a different cloud provider. So we can't restrict on one particular provider saying that we can support only AWS. So in our case, Kubernetes gives us a very good solution to work on multiple clouds. So you have to just build once and deploy it anywhere.
Yeah, very true. Any other questions from anybody? Sir, Naveen sir?
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Sir,
Thank you. The session was very informative. I have one question. How our students can work on these? Are there any open source platforms?
These are, sorry to interrupt. These are all open source. So like
in
you
the
can
sense,
just.
What I mean to say is, like, if I want to work with the SAP HANA and all our students, it may not be possible. Pretty simple, so that our students can do some mini projects or projects. That's what I meant, because too much of technology would be burden to our students.
True. See, at least if you want to use a database, HANA, there is an Express edition, which is a trial version kind of it. If you want to just use the DB, maybe that is, I guess it is available for free. Similarly, there are many DBs. It's not just HANA. You can go with MySQL, which is very lightweight. If you want just looking for a small project on Kubernetes, you can pick any small, let's say MongoDB or MSSQL, not MSSQL, MySQL, something like this is a very lightweight
Postgres
applications. Yes,
yeah.
Postgres can be used. Yes, okay. So we can make use of this to just run our application, because again, HANA itself is a very heavy DB. You can't deploy it in a container right now.
Okay. So thank you very much. I hope the session was very informative and a bit different. What our students used to listen, because normally we used to conduct seminars which actually map to their subjects.
Okay.
And I hope this session had helped our students to think a bit differently, and maybe the new technologies that are coming up. I hope all our students are benefited with this session. And thank you very much from the department and from myself for accepting the invitation and sharing your experiences with our students, and hope to associate with you more and do a lot more events from the department. Thank you, Arun. Thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting me, and thank you. This is wonderful.
Thank you, Naidila ma'am, for conducting such a good event for our students. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think today our faculty and also our students attended this. Many of our faculty are online, and from their side and also from the department, thank you. And thank you for all attending this event. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you, Arun. Thank you for joining and sharing your views. And especially since we do have cloud computing as a course, so this is definitely going to be very useful our students, those who are studying this course, and as well who are not there in this course, because this is a very new technology that is going on in the market. Thank you once again, and thank you all the participants for joining. Have a good day. Yeah.